Hello and greetings from sunny Sydney. I'm Doug McCartney, and a couple of weeks ago I produced a short video all about a bloke called Greg Sheridan. Now Greg Sheridan is a journalist and he's also an author. He recently wrote a book all about the joys of Christianity, and in a recent interview he suggested that the God of the Bible, the Hebrew deity, the diabolical beast of the Bible, he suggested that this God, this deity, is merciful. Imagine that! Well, I took issue with that and I decided to make a short video of my own disputing his claim. Now, as it happens, I'm an author too. This is my book, The Little Red Bible Book. It didn't sell particularly well. I wrote it back in the early 1980s. I spent 8 years studying the Bible and writing all about it. I wrote it all longhand with a ballpoint pen, all 320 pages. But as I say, it didn't sell particularly well. I had no idea how to market it. But it's quite a good book. A lot of useful information, contains a lot of absolutely hideous and ghastly illustrations that I paid a lot of money for, by the way. Quite intricate and yeah, sort of fun. Artists spent hundreds of hours working on all these illustrations. Anyway, I won't go on about that. I'm not here to promote my book. I'm here to talk about Greg Sheridan's book. So, towards the end of this video, what I will do, I'll put a few of the illustrations together. I'll glue them onto the end of the video so you can see what I'm talking about. So, worth waiting for. Stick around.
Journalist and author Greg Sheridan is not only a believer in the religious sense, he argues in his new book that Christianity is more important than ever. And he joins us now live from Melbourne. Greg, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, Sarah.
Do you think the way so many people are abandoning religion that God has become superfluous and we don't need him anymore? But you argue the opposite.
I tell you, Sarah, it's a measure of God's mercy that he can still reach out to someone who's been a newspaper journalist for 40 years. I believe in God. I think it's true. I think all human beings need God's mercy, and when we're affluent and healthy, we can kind of pretend to ourselves that we don't. We isolate ourselves from God, and that becomes, I think that's very bad for society. I mean, human beings are formed by a culture, and a culture without God is going to form very strange human beings. Whenever we've seen it in the past, societies without God, it's been very, very unpleasant.
And so I'm left wondering which God it is that Greg's talking about. He talks about God's mercy. He even makes a bit of a joke about it. Surely he's not talking about the God of the Bible. And yet I suspect that as a Catholic, he probably is. He's talking about the God who had 42 children ripped apart by wild bears, simply for being a bit mischievous, simply because they called a stupid old man Old Baldhead. The God of the Bible thought, right, I'll show you. I'll set wild bears onto you and have you ripped apart limb from limb, all 42 of you. Is that the merciful Father you're talking about, Greg? Or is it perhaps the God who forced mothers to boil and eat their own children because he was angry at them and he was going to punish them at all costs? So he forced mothers to boil and eat their children. Several times in the Old Testament. Is that the God of mercy that you worship, Greg? Or is it perhaps the God who sent the flood? Remember that? The story of Noah and his ark and all that kind of nonsense? Is that the God of mercy you worship? The God that drowned all of humanity at the time, including women and children, little babies, just drowned them because he could. He was annoyed. He thought, I'll drown everybody. Is that the God of mercy you worship, Greg? Surely it's not the God who instructed fathers, if their daughters failed to bleed profusely on their wedding night, the fathers were ordered to drag their daughters to the gates of the city and instruct the men of the city to stone the children to death, the little 12, 13-year-old girls. Stone them to death because they didn't bleed profusely on their wedding night. Is that your God of mercy, Greg? What about slavery? Surely you don't consider it merciful to kidnap slaves, force them to spend their whole lives toiling to please their masters. The God of the Bible encouraged slavery. He said it was cool, it was good, it was all good. Capture slaves, you can sell them, trade with them, you can bequeath them to your children. But slavery, all good, according to God, the God you worship. Greg, when you talk about the God of mercy, is this the same God who burned to death the inhabitants of 2 cities, Sodom and Gomorrah? Why did he do that? Well, apparently, so it's been suggested since then that some of the men were homosexual. And so God thought, right, I'll show you. I'll burn you all to death, including the innocent women and children. Now, he could have killed them instantly. He had the power to do that, right? He's all powerful, omnipotent, omnipotent. But he thought, no, why should I kill them instantly? I'll burn them. I'll kill them in the most agonizing method possible. I'll burn them all to death. I will get my rocks off seeing the little children and babies writhing in pain. Is this the God you worship, Greg? The merciful God? You're one very sick man. Greg, old chap, it's not really your fault that you believe all this crap. Chances are, as a child, your parents, priests, teachers, all of them ganged up on you. They decided to pollute your brain, corrupt your brain. Their decision was to fill your head full of shit, absolute crap. And of course, as a child, you wouldn't have known any better. You just took it all on board. But it is your fault that you haven't bothered to check it out. The brain is compartmentalized. You can be clever, intelligent in one area of your brain and a total moron with the other half of your brain, and that's you to a T. Voltaire, you remember the French philosopher Voltaire? He put it beautifully. He said, a man can be a brilliant mathematician, a learned chemist, and an accomplished astronomer, yet still believe Mohammed keeps half the moon up his sleeve. Yay! That's you to a T. Okay, so you don't worship or follow Mohammed anyway, but you do worship a walking corpse, a dead body that sprang back to life, what is known as a zombie, a Christ. You do believe all that shit because that's this kind of rubbish that was jammed into your head as a child. And now you've just shown us all that you worship the most monstrous God, the most hideous, ghastly, sadistic God ever manufactured in the minds of men. You worship that piece of filth and you refer to it as the God of mercy. Greg, wake the fuck up.